Yeah. This is This is This is that's clear, no fear. This is This is This is that's clear, no fear.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Webb Show, episode 3, season 2. Really excited because tonight we're talking Star Wars, what we're calling the Fandom Menace. It's going to be super awesome. We got lots of great stuff to discuss tonight.
Do it.
And we are going to be interacting with you, which is something that we don't always see on the podcast. However, if you're listening back on whether it be Spotify or Apple Music, YouTube, wherever you enjoy your podcast, and you want to be a part live, we do this every Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time at twitch.tv/WebbyPumpkin. We would love to have you come and be a part of it and get involved whenever we do this. Every other Thursday, twitch.tv/WebbyPumpkin. I'm joined by two awesome guys today who know a lot more about Star Wars than me. Which really isn't saying a whole lot because I'm not quite well versed as I'd like to be. Starting out to my right, your left, Mr. Hoagie Holden over here.
Hello there.
Tell us a little about yourself, man.
Kenobi.
Oh, okay, we're ready. We're ready.
We're already here. We're already there.
Cool. Well, Holden, tell us a little about yourself, and then we'll jump over to this guy.
Man, I am 23 years old. I am from a small town named Caledonia, Mississippi, which is probably nowhere on anybody's radar. I love music. I love Star Wars. I love Star Trek. Which is like not common, but
that's weird.
My dad instilled that in me from a young age. I love Star Trek as well. Star Trek, I think the very first 5 minutes of the first, not the first, but like the first Star Trek movie that J.J. Abrams made, it's like the best 5 minutes of a movie probably ever, in my opinion. So love that, and super excited to be here and just have a good time and talk about things that we love to enjoy.
Awesome. That's super exciting. Guys, a familiar face if you're coming over from Mixer. You know and love the voice of the intro song that you just heard, Mr. Scott Sky. What's up?
What's up? Hey, I'm glad to be here on Twitch because this is my first time being on a Twitch stream.
That's right.
I did a few Mixer streams back in the day, but glad to be here with Webby again. And, of course, I'm Scott, a.k.a. Scott Sky. You can look me up on the interwebs. I got music out there. But, hey, Star Wars is a passion of mine. Something I've been enthralled with since I was like 3 years old, so I'm excited for this conversation.
This is going to be really cool. I'm super excited. I will say, just as a reminder, because we are recording audio, make sure we're eating our mics real good, like had them there. You did great. Hold it. No, I'm kidding.
It's okay.
It's
a little darker over here, but it's fine.
The dark side of the Force. Okay. I see. Look, Scott, I got to say, you have been awesome, like one of the day one supporters for the channel, especially on Mixer. And boy, oh boy, have we seen a lot together and come a long way as far as streaming. Who's even heard of a microphone when we started? I think we were using the ones that were built in and trying to make it. It's pretty bad. I would direct you to a video on YouTube where we tried to play Mario Kart, but I unlisted it because no one should be subjugated to that ever again. And it's not because of you. It was pretty rough, but.
It took a while to figure out how to make sure audio and video all lined up. But we're way beyond that now. As y'all can see, this is next level. And, there's a few levels yet to go, which I'm excited for the Webby Pumpkin stream.
Yeah, I feel like the best is yet to come. I've been telling people, these are your words, not mine, really, but I've been telling people, 2020 was really rough. But if we can keep that pumpkin positivity, we can keep going forward and moving ahead, then this year really can be our year. So this is the one, 2021 for the win. I am getting in the chat that your mic is a little low, so stay up close to that. If not, we may have to increase the gain for that independently. If we end up doing that, I might get you to reach over. He's on channel 3. And we'll bring him up.
Gotcha.
All right, guys. So we have some things to talk about. Remember, chat, would love to interact with you as well and kind of hear your thoughts on it. But we're going to kick things off because this is, on Twitch, and we are gamers in a sense. We're going to kick this off with EA and how they've lost the exclusivity rights to Star Wars video games. And it's kind of crazy. So we see the revival of Lucasfilm's games now because of this. And I'm pretty excited about it, honestly, because I really personally am not an EA fan. Like, no hates, but I'm not a sports guy, and I think they do their sports games really great. But I think there's a lot of potential for better games to come now that EA isn't there. We're already seeing one from Ubisoft that's being developed right now. So the galaxy far, far away is broadening outside of the realm of EA, and I'm super stoked about it. I think it offers a lot of potential freedom for Lucasfilm Gaming. So y'all have any thoughts on that?
Well, I will say, back in the day, I was a big Star Wars video game guy, and we're talking pre-Disney acquisition of Lucasfilm and the Star Wars property. But like, you look at like the PlayStation 2 era, there's just, and then it was just LucasArts was the umbrella everything was under, and we had games from like Star Wars Pod Racer, the Star Wars Bounty Hunter, the Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy games, just different Starfighter games. Every movie had its own game. So it was just every year there was 3 to 4 Star Wars video games. And then Disney acquires Star Wars. There's an agreement with EA to, create video games. And we got Star Wars, the rebooted Star Wars Battlefront. Of course, back when I was talking in that PlayStation 2 era, we had the original Battlefront 1 and 2 classics. But, EA has given us Battlefront 2, a very good Jedi Fallen Order game that's sometimes goes under the radar, but a very good, put yourself in the shoes of a Jedi game. And then their only other game has been a X-Wing TIE Fighter Squadrons game. And that in like 8 years, they've given us 4 games, where back in the day, you got 4 a year. So I'm excited as a Star Wars fan and a video game fan to see, more companies develop multiple Star Wars games, because we know, as we're going to get into it, the Star Wars universe, the lore, there's so much mythos that you can dive into. You can go several different directions with several different characters when it comes to video games. So I'm all on board for that, if that's what we're getting.
Yeah, I'm super excited about that. Holden, you have anything you want to add to that, or?
No. Just for like some context for me is that the only games of those that I have played was that I grew up playing was Battlefront, Battlefront 2, and so like obviously classics instantly, but my next 2 games to play are Squadrons and Fallen Order, so I haven't really got to like personally experience those, but I've heard a lot of great things about Fallen Order. I've heard I haven't heard many bad things, but I've heard a lot of good things about it. So super, and I think it's on sale in the PlayStation Store right now for like $24.
Yeah.
So
2 things to add in from the chat that I think are good. We got Doji Studio has a great question that we're going to address, which is he said he'd go ahead and say his right now. In our opinion, what order should we watch the Star Wars saga? I'm going to pause us on that because we got Geek Theory in the house, who's probably the Star Wars authority on TikTok right now. So Geek Theory, glad to have you. Longtime friend, new name. Super glad that you're here. He says, all right, I have to chime in here. Quality over quantity. Not all of the games pre-Disney were good. In fact, most of them were just borderline trash. I feel like you might want to follow up on that.
There was some trash when we're talking at like Xbox 360, PS3 era, because that's kind of where the drop-off happened. It's more so when we're during the time of the prequels coming out, 1999 through 2005, that's when all the best games came out. And that was PlayStation 2 original Xbox. And then you get to that next gen and it kind of drops off. And then in the PS4, Xbox One generation, we hadn't had very many games. So I think it's cool now that we're back into a next gen with PS5 and Xbox that we can, relaunch with more developers working on Star Wars games. But yeah, there's bad games out there. But the thing is, as a consumer, I have the option to buy what game I want to buy. You give me one game and that's my only choice, then I'm stuck when that's a bad game. You give me 4 games and 2 are good and 2 are bad, I have options. So that's all I'm going to say on that.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair there. We'll go ahead and take that pause unless you have something you want to add with the EA.
Take the pause.
Just real quick to answer Dojit's Doritos question then, which was what order should you watch the Star Wars saga? Well, let's throw that towards Holden. Holden, what are you thinking?
I'm a firm believer in watching them the order that they released, not by actual chronological order of canon timeline. I'm a fan of experiencing it the way that it was meant to be experienced. So like episodes 4, 5, 6, then go back to the prequels 1, 2, 3, and then in between that you can watch Rogue One and Solo, and then 7, 8, and 9 you can just not watch and still feel and still get the you can get the actual Star Wars experience instead of the one that Disney created that is I don't support at all.
I like the way this guy thinks, because thinks I would have gone 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, Rogue One, and you're done.
Okay, so blasters fired. All right, let's see what's happening here. Geek Theory's come back on that. I genuinely agree with you as well, Holden, though. That's the way that I watched them because I wanted that unique experience, even though I knew, not spoiler alert, but spoiler alert, that, Luke was going to be, the offspring of Darth Vader. I knew all these like big spoilers already, but I still watched it that way. However, that's not how I would rewatch it. That's like how I would watch it for the first time, because now I'm just now getting into like the Clone Wars, which you both have completed, and y'all are like, come on, Webby, get it.
Forgot about that,
man. So like when you're looking at all this extra content that's going on, like I just feel like would be really easy to burn out and drop off too soon. So movies first in the release order, and then go back and watch maybe like them in chronological order, but add in like Clone Wars and Rebels and Mandalorian and maybe when I say movies, I mean like actual saga too. Like then on the rewatch, throw in like Rogue One and Solo and get those like extra stuff. Geek Theory did chime back in. If you want to hear that, Mr. Scott,
what'd he say?
He says, or you end up buying 4 terrible games and you're out the money. It's a risk either way. Personally, I appreciate the calculated risk being taken presently. But I'm excited to see what comes from other studios getting their hands on Star Wars.
Also, to be fair, during that time, I was under my mama and daddy's household, so I didn't buy any games as a 5th grader. They were bought for me.
That is, when there's real money that's like I carry around in my wallet involved, that's a total game changer. Let's see. Coop Daddy says 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, Rogue One.
See?
So yeah, that's it.
Look, and we're not here to bash the sequel trilogy. We're just here to acknowledge it's no good.
Which is completely different. Completely different.
Yeah, totally.
And the thing is, like, some of my best movie theater going experiences outside of like Infinity War and Endgame with Marvel was seeing The Force Awakens. Because the energy level seeing that opening night and that first time you see Lucasfilm, and you don't get the 20th Century Fox intro like the originals, but you get Lucasfilm, and then boom, into the theme, into the crawl, and then that whole experience watching The Force Awakens, one of the greatest experiences of my life. But then I didn't hate The Force Awakens. I hated The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker was thrown together. So that's kind of where I stand on that.
It had so much potential.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't taken advantage of at all.
So I think I figured out that the feedback's actually coming from me, so I'm just muting in between, and I turned myself back up for you twigs there. Dreamy Kind of Day says 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 6. Interesting.
I've never thought of it that way, but I can
I've
probably
heard people
support
do it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I think it could make the final impact of episode 6 more
a little more.
meaningful.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
But I explain the order of Star Wars and how you should watch it, assuming that once you get done, you will watch them again. Like, I don't think Star Wars is something you can watch once and fully appreciate. Like, it's something that you have to. I mean, you don't have to set a certain number on it, but it's not something that you can just watch once and fully understand or fully appreciate. So I say my order of how I would watch it, or how I would tell others to watch it, assuming that once they get done, they would have more questions or want to watch it again to get the greater impact of all the little things that they probably didn't pick up the first time.
Yeah, I'd agree with that because I know I've watched them all the way through in their entirety once. And I'm working on getting back through that. Like the way, like I'd seen some of them before, but like actual Saga in its entirety once. And there's tons that I didn't get, including one of the things we'll talk about today that I learned this week trying to prepare. So I'm super excited about that. Coop Daddy says the surprise of Dad Vader is needed before watching the prequels, in my opinion. Dream kind of Day agrees. I kind of agree. I think that shock of like Luke. Well, that's actually not correct quote. Just I am your father to Luke. That's needed. That's totally needed. Agreed. Appreciate that also Twiggy. Twiggy says awesome setup. All right, guys, if that's good, let's jump back into games real quick, and then we'll be off the game topic. Just wanted everyone to know while we're on the topic of like Star Wars games that Star Wars is actually running their Heritage sale right now, and you can get Star Wars Racers, Star Wars Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy, Star Wars Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast, all for 50% off on PlayStation, Xbox, and Switch. If you're interested in that, I'm dropping the link to those sales in the chat right now. If you're hearing this back later, just a Google search, Star Wars Heritage. You've got till the end of this month. Go for it.
Yeah, that Jedi Knight, Jedi Outcast was a personal favorite of my brother's, but that's because he knew the cheat codes and had unlimited force abilities. So he, imagine just like unlimited force push, Sith lightning, lightsaber throws, and then there was a cheat where the stormtroopers' arms and bodies actually cut in half when you hit them. You don't get that anymore in today's age with Star Wars games. But back in the day, there was cheat codes where you could slice a stormtrooper right in half.
Dang, I love the opportunity Scott took there to not only tell us his really interesting thing about the game, but also throw a little shade at his brother. I love everything about that.
Hey, that's how I play it too. I'm just saying he was the one, that was his game on GameCube that he always played.
Look, so we got Slick Willie in the chat, who's a longtime supporter as well, and I just got to read what he says here, because he said, a little birdie told me that Webby Pumpkin is far superior than most. I concur. He says, I love Webby so much, Alicia's Keys even made a song about it. Oh, man, loving that. Slick, glad you're here, dude. All right. Oh, I can't mute my mic and do that. All right, let's move on, because we've got some lore and some really interesting stuff that I know Holden can't wait to get into, because as he already admitted, he's not really a Star Wars gamer, but he is like probably like a Star Wars like walking encyclopedia. You've told me more weird things about the Star Wars universe that, or at least they're weird to me, than I've ever come into contact with. So I'm super excited about that. And we're going to kick things off with something that I thought was really interesting. I know Scott's not super excited about it, so we'll kind of run through it. But kind of like what your lightsaber color says about you and what color options there were. Because when I was like growing up, I legit thought it was like green, blue, red. Like that was it. And then there's this whole world of other colors and everything. So we'll kind of go through them real quick. We'll start with the original three. So green, blue, red. We'll do it in that order. And then we'll jump into some of these weird ones, and we'll even touch like on the abominations that come out in episode 9. So anyway, all that happening. You told me earlier in the week that personality-wise, you definitely feel like you would have a green lightsaber. We gave you that in the thumbnail, like super cool. Can you kind of shed some light on why and what that means, like to be a green saber guy?
I got you. And I actually found this while looking through my photos. I think it was either today or yesterday. I've had it pulled up ever since. Of course, BuzzFeed is the perfect place for all your information. So I'm going to read something from there from a test that I took not too long ago, actually, in December. And so I took a test to see which color lightsaber I would get, and I got green. And no, I didn't take the test, trying to get green. I actually had some people around me who knew me pretty well, like answer some of the questions for me, and it turned out in green. And it says this, green is for the Jedi who are extremely well versed in the ways of the Force and favor negotiation instead of combat. They are known as Jedi consulars and are equated with scholars. Notable users, of course, Yoda and Qui-Gon Jinn. I would throw Luke in there as well, which is, I don't know why they didn't do that, but Luke's deserves to be up there just as much. You care about others and can be cooperative, even though you do have passionate opinions which showcase your individuality. Looking towards the future and wanting more out of life are also important things that motivate you. You may be quiet at times, especially since you are mostly a deep thinker, which is perfect for me, which sometimes leads to having unrealistic expectations, but no one can deny that you are knowledgeable. So in general, from what I understand, and I know you called me a walking encyclopedia, but the only reason I have any information that I have is because I've listened to a lot of other people who know a lot more, which I don't know if what that says about me and how much of a nerd I am, but I just watch a lot of YouTube videos. And so like for green lightsabers, like it just what it said is it's not all about fighting for people with green lightsabers. It's about the mental game behind everything and about how to use the Force in order to solve problems instead of using the lightsaber to solve all of your problems. And I vibe with that. Like I love the idea of like having the capability to just mow down people if I need to, but like using all of the Force and all of my power and capabilities and mental strength to also win instead of just having to push my way through people. I respect that.
Would you concur? Or so in the thumbnail we gave you a blue saber, which I guess is more of like not that, more like, hey, as long as I can mow you down and I can like kill you with a saber, like that's all I need. Like who cares about the Force? Any thoughts on that?
Well, it's still, even with blue lightsabers, those Jedi, they still adhere to the Jedi code.
Yeah.
But my understanding, they're typically the more, warrior
type.
combat. They have the skills associated with that. And when I think about it, you look back at like the Clone Wars, and you notice all the Jedi generals pretty much have blue lightsabers. Now, of course, every once in a while, Yoda show up and fight some people, but like Obi-Wan, Anakin, blue lightsabers all the way. Some Kiade Monday, yeah, they all had blue lightsabers. So yeah, I think that was kind of always, whether it was specifically mentioned in canon, that's always kind of been the understanding with the differences between green and blue. But as we're going to talk more, there's obviously more colors than that. But that's always been kind of the the meditative, hippie-esque Jedi.
Yeah, and to add to that, it's not like if you have a green, you're only a mental type of Jedi, and it's not if you have a blue, you only like to fight. And I think Obi-Wan's a great example of the in between, because he literally had a reputation for being the negotiator, which pretty much would sound like how I describe somebody with a green lightsaber, but he had a blue lightsaber. And so like it's not like if I'm green, I'm only this way, and if I'm blue, I'm only like this. Because like Anakin, for example, and Obi-Wan both have blue lightsabers, but typically, and we're going to talk about episode 3 in a little bit, but typically, it would be more common for Anakin to just be a better swordsman than Obi-Wan. I think that's pretty clear. And if you watch the Clone Wars, like obviously, like Obi-Wan is well equipped to do everything that he needs to do, but typically, like Anakin would be considered a better fighter. But there's still some like gray area and overlap between those, and it's not like this hard cut in the middle where you're only one way and you're only one way on both sides, if that makes sense. It's more of like a focus.
Yeah. Now, Holden, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is when a Jedi constructs his lightsaber, it's kind of the kyber crystal that kind of decides, like kind of feeds off their Force energy and kind of decides what color they are. There's not an option on the lightsaber to, change your color. So
There is a Disney.
Yeah, but those cost like $200. So,
and they call Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber Rey's.
Yeah, that's an offense.
Look it up on Amazon.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious, and I don't know if I've been madder in my life.
Oh my gosh!
Because I was like, these are pretty legit. I might get one, and then I saw that, and I was like, nope, not today.
Yeah, but
I don't like that.
Yeah, but yeah, it is a thing where you're not picking your color. It's kind of the Force kind of knows what your color is, and with the Sith and the red lightsabers, those kyber crystals have been like purged, and that's why it's red, kind of thing. You see that with like Kylo Ren's, how his lightsaber is that very crackly, kind of very distorted, like it could like blow up at any time. That's because like the damage done to the crystal when it's being purged kind of left it in that state.
Yeah, I've heard it done. We'll jump right into red then, because I've heard like how you get that red crystal, if you will, is because you bleed it. You bleed the crystal, is how they're called, and his is broken, which makes it a very unstable like saber. Like it's the ugly. Well, some people really like it. But it's the ugliest saber I've ever seen. Like it's just you can tell that there's
very
something wrong with it.
aggressive.
Yep,
It's raw.
Yeah, aggressive raw. The reason it has those like hilt spikes on the side is because it has to be vented out because it is nuclear essentially. Like it really is going to blow at any time. So what exactly does that mean then to like bleed the kyber crystal? Do we and everybody, if you don't know, kyber crystals are the crystals that you need as like the light focusing element of the lightsaber.
It's like the batteries.
Yeah, essentially. So
pretty much.
that's really good. That's a really good like analogy. That's good. So how do you bleed the batteries, if you will?
And everybody else correct me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding and what I've heard is that it takes a specific dark side use of the force to bleed the crystal, which of course turns it red. So it's crystals in and of themselves aren't good or bad, and pick a specific color. It's about who has them. And like that's a different story about how they get those, but it's typically like you're not even capable of doing that until you've given yourself over to the dark side, and then you can use a certain ability that comes with using the dark side to make that crystal bleed, which would then turn the saber red.
So would there be a possibility of healing a crystal? Say you came back. Like I don't know if there's any evidence of that ever happening, but I wonder.
I don't know. Yeah, at that point, just get you another one.
Yeah. Give up. I'm like, oh, it's a past life. I don't want to deal with this anymore. I totally get that. All right, so we touched on blue. We touched on green. We touched on red. So some lesser known colors that we'll jump into are yellow, purple, and white. And why don't we start with purple? Because I feel like the Purple Saber has a very interesting story. Mace Windu probably being the most and only that I'm aware of user of a Purple Saber. So I'll just kind of kick that off because from what I understand, like the real lore behind the Purple Saber is that he wanted it, and George
Samuel
Lucas,
Jackson's a boss.
He's a boss,
so
and he wanted it, and it's his favorite color. So he's like, "Hey, I want to be able to see myself on the screen, so I want a Purple Saber," and they agreed. And I honestly, up until what I think is my saber color, it was my favorite saber. Like I really like the purple. So y'all have any thoughts on purple?
Well, I think there's been attempts in various comics and novels over the years, stuff that's now legends, and I don't know what the current canon, answer to that is, but there's always been people trying to explain in universe why there's a purple lightsaber, but the reason in the movies is just because Sam Jackson wanted it. But I don't know, Holden, if that personality test gave any insight to purple. It didn't.
I don't know either.
Well, I guess you didn't get purple, so you wouldn't know.
I don't.
So I did a quick Google search, and it says the purple lightsabers are among the most mysterious color of lightsabers, which makes sense because we don't know what it is. The shading purple speaks to moral uncertainty, reconstruction, and recovery. Therefore, the individual that used a purple lightsaber generally shared an affinity with both light and dark sides of the Force.
Yeah, which is why it's purple, which is a mix of red and blue.
But why not a mix of red and green?
Because it's both dark side and light side. You see what I'm saying?
And the mix of red and green is an ugly color.
Exactly. That makes sense. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Samuel L. Jackson doesn't like that color, so they don't use that color.
That's totally what it was. So that's interesting because I've heard something similar describing a color that we'll get to in just a little bit. That would, I guess, be the combination of a green and a red. So we'll talk on that. So essentially, all you need to know about purple is that it's really pretty, and Samuel Jackson wanted it, so it is so. Mm-hmm. That's all there is to it. Like, let me check in on here. Let's see. Geek Theory says we got yes, Ahsoka purified the red kyber crystal of the sixth brother as a Sith Inquisitor who was hunting Jedi. Purifying the crystal allowed her to have the white lightsaber that she currently has.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's how you get. I was wondering because I know in my study with the white saber. Why don't we go ahead and talk about that? With my study of the white saber, it basically said like no affinity to Jedi or Sith. Like essentially, it gets the exact opposite of the purple because like you have like a little bit of dealings with both, but white is like not at all, not at all. Like I don't care. I'm force sensitive, but that's about where that ends, and I can I can wield light. So if you have any thoughts on that geek theory, let us know as well. I want to know.
Which makes sense for Ahsoka because one of her favorite lines that I've heard her say is, I cannot remember for the life of me where it is, but it's somewhere in Clone Wars where she's fighting somebody and they're just talking about how no Jedi can defeat them, and then she just goes, "I am no Jedi." It's like, yes. Anyway, sorry, I really love Ahsoka.
Mm.
I can't wait to talk more about Ahsoka because I just started the Clone Wars. So,
Yeah,
you know,
you got a long way to go.
I do, but man, like Ahsoka is real easy to like just in season 1.
just
and then,
wait.
Of course, in the Mandalorian, I'm like, okay, she's kind of a boss, and I think they did a pretty good job with her. They haven't always done good jobs with things, but we might talk about Luke in a little bit, so we'll see. But anywho, so white. Then we have white, we have purple, yellow, and then later orange. Let's talk about yellow. So yellow is what I ascribe to be my own like saber, and you'd probably even do a better job of like explaining like what yellow means. So I might like throw it to you guys on that. Unfortunately, I took that same BuzzFeed quiz, and whatever happened like with the people at BuzzFeed, they said, could you believe this? They said that I would have a red saber. What a crazy thing. Like,
He's got some issues
You got
that
some
we don't know
dark
about.
side tendencies there.
apparently so, and I didn't realize that. I'll read, since you read your BuzzFeed, like I'll read what it gave me because I put it in the Discord. Guys, if you're not in the Discord, by the way, dropping a link in the chat right now. I'd love to have you join. So basically mine is this. Let me go back to my chatting. Find it. Okay. So mine is red lightsabers are used by anyone affiliated with the dark side. No kyber crystal is organically red. The user must pour all of their hate, anger, and suffering into the crystal, making it bleed red in agony. Notable users are Darth Vader, Kylo Ren, etc. You're a natural-born leader, and you value security and loyalty. I'm liking the words that are being said. And you value security and loyalty as well as being hard-working and driven. You value structure and resourcefulness with little patience for inefficiency. You are calm and analytical. Dang, guys, I might be a Sith.
So you're a Sith Lord.
I'm a Sith Lord, able to think abstractly and require immediate results for any tasks. You are very ambitious and are not threatened by conflict, not afraid of being in charge, as you know you'll do a good job.
This is how democracy dies.
Yeah, Holden, I think Webby is a Sith Lord.
I think your next line of merch should be red.
I'm going to do it. Oh, so, okay, guys, I'm...
He's too dangerous to be left alive.
I'm the one type that can live in all of the movies. It's great.
You're about to hit us with an unlimited power.
Dreamy Kind of Day comes in and says, what a 3. For those of you who don't know, I'm an Enneagram 3. If you're familiar with the Enneagram, and apparently that's very good. Can we please talk about yellow and make me think that I might want that again? So please make me feel better about myself, guys.
Yeah. You want to take it or?
Well, I just thought yellow was reserved for the Jedi Temple Guards, and they're Jedi, but they have that very specific role of being security. So they're not like
Like a nun.
Yeah, I guess, a nun or a monk that has, they're not out in the public eye like the Jedi were in the prequels, because, on Coruscant, the Jedi had a very public presence, which, led to a lot of things that happened with Palpatine and the Senate and stuff. So, yeah, the yellow, as far as I know, I don't know if there's any significance behind it being yellow, but that was reserved for the temple guards.
I think from what I understand, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, like the general understanding of a yellow lightsaber is like, we are here to keep the peace, and do nothing else other than just protect. And so that's what they did, just protected the Jedi Temple.
Well, in that case, I looked it up, and what Google says is that, it's a Jedi count. So green indicated consular, blue was Guardian, I think. Well, wait, hold on. What was blue? Yeah, Jedi Guardian. And so yellow was the Jedi Sentinel, a Jedi who honed his or her skills in a balance of combat and scholarly pursuits, which seems like the in-between. But I don't know, so I'm just going to openly admit to you guys, after hearing you guys talk about yellow and after reading that BuzzFeed article,
You're a Sith.
that I'm a Sith. I can't believe it. Next time I'm gonna do a podcast and find out I'm a Slytherin too, and I'm just gonna ruin everything. Anyway, no.
This is one of those moments where from here on out everything is before and after right now. for you. That's what it's gonna be.
Yeah.
That's before I found out I was a Sith. So
That's so true. My wife, Wonderfully Mermaid, for those of you who don't know, is my wife, and she comes in and she goes, I could see red for you. And then she goes, not all the dark side stuff, but the other stuff. And then she says, yeah, you're not yellow. So I'm a Sith. Hey, now I know what color saber I need to put right here on the wall. I need a red saber. But it ain't going to be Kylo Ren's, that nasty looking thing. Anyway, I'm not a fan.
it's gotta be Darth Vader's.
It's got to be Vader's. I want Vader's. However, I could go with like a Darth Maul. I'd be cool with that.
That'd be cool as well.
Double up. Yeah.
Double up, double the trouble. Webby Pumpkin.
Could show
Anyway,
you could do Savage Press, even though you haven't seen him yet. But we'll
yeah, I
get there.
haven't, but I'm sure as long as it's red, apparently it'll do. So
It's red.
awesome. Well, now we've hit all the colors except for orange, and then the one that we're saving for last. Orange is Ray's lightsaber, not
So it doesn't exist.
essentially, yeah. But we should talk about it because Mr. Whittier Jones is an orange saber.
They're calling that orange because it. I guess so. To me, it looks yellowish, but orange.
I don't know.
So, hey, ironically enough, I decided I'd look it up, and since we're speaking canon, in new canon, there's no indication of what, if anything, an orange saber means. So, let's
Sounds
just say,
about right.
Yeah, it's a yellow saber that the batteries are running down on. I don't know. All right, well, that figures that out. Sorry, Mr. Whittier, I know you have an orange saber, so says BuzzFeed, and maybe you can throw in some light on what that means if you want, Mr. Whittier.
Yeah.
The last one, and the one we're going to spin into our next conversation, is black, a black saber or the dark saber. This is something I know very little about until I saw it in The Mandalorian, so I'm just going to go ahead and throw it to whichever of you wants it. What is the black saber? What does it mean? How did it come in? Anything you want to share about black saber, and go.
Well, the dark saber. Easy mistake to make. Black
Oh,
saber, dark saber.
I apologize. Oh.
Look, it's politically correct to be a dark saber. You can't call it a black saber. But this is essentially a Mandalorian lightsaber. It's one of the oldest, earliest lightsabers, because in Star Wars lore there are things like proto sabers, which before they had the right technology and to have like the lightsabers as we know it, like the first lightsabers were like you had to have a big backpack
With a string.
Yeah,
attached
to
to
power
that
it.
Powered it because they didn't have kyber crystals yet.
Yeah,
Or they were there, but they didn't know how to
Yeah.
what they were.
So you had different variations of lightsaber, and then the Jedi Order, I guess, probably by time the dark saber was invented, had regular lightsabers. But
Did you
essentially,
know the Sith found them first?
the Sith found kyber crystals first.
Yeah.
Well,
Which is why the Jedi had to find them because they were like, we can't keep
Oops.
walking around with cables and cords while they're out here being free.
yeah.
I want to hear more about that. That's awesome. Somebody's like, if this can do it, I can do it too.
I don't know much about it. I just saw it in a video this week, and I was like, didn't know that, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. But essentially, one of the only Mandalorians to become a Jedi, or at least be a Force user, just who the planet's named after, Mandalore the Great, fashioned his own lightsaber, and he fashioned the dark saber, and then that goes on to be passed down to just the ruler of Mandalore has that saber. So it's not even, and anyone in Star Wars can pick up and use a lightsaber. We see, in Empire Strikes Back, Han Solo picks it up to open up a tauntaun. So anyone, it's not like you have to have the Force to be able to turn on a lightsaber. It's, it's a button to turn it on. But essentially that first Jedi Mandalorian, he became the ruler of Mandalore by wielding the dark saber, and then now that has a very significant place in the history of the planet Mandalore and for Mandalorians after that.
And it's also something that Mandalore hasn't always had.
Mm-hmm.
And this is in a lot of the history of the darksaber that we have, at least visually in canon. It comes from the Clone Wars and Rebels, and so eventually, and I don't know the specifics behind this, but eventually, from the time that Mandalore the Great, in between the time that Mandalore the Great became a Jedi and in between then and I'll say the prequels. Eventually, the Mandalorian people and the Jedi had a war, and that the dark saber ended up being like a relic in the Jedi Temple that was kept at the Jedi Temple, which Mandalorian snuck in and took back. And then, of course, like it became like a part of Mandalore, and whoever had it would rule Mandalore. But even in that, like the time between that happening, Duchess Satine became the ruler, which was Obi-Wan's ex-lover, which we can talk about some other time. But she was a
Webby, we're gonna have to do a Clone Wars recap.
yeah.
The day you finish watching Clone Wars, me and Holden will be back right here talking Clone Wars with you.
Yeah. So anyway, like Duchess Satine becomes ruler of Mandalore. Obviously, Mandalorians are warriors. Like they're known for their armor, and just like literally the way I just explained it to him earlier this week was like if there was a Sparta in the Star Wars universe, it would be Mandalorians. That's just what they did. They won wars and they fought battles, and they were the best at doing it. But Duchess Satine became ruler, the Duchess of the planet, and she's a pacifist. And so she shut down all siding of wars. She became Mandalore became completely neutral in everything. And then there was this like this extremist organization called the Death Watch, which actually Bo-Katan was in for a time until she realized that they were extremists and then decided to run away from that. But the leader of Death Watch like had the dark saber, and him with the help of Darth Maul, which doesn't make sense if you haven't seen the Clone Wars because he died in episode 1, but he doesn't really die. And I'm sorry if that was a spoiler alert I should have gave out there. But anyway, so like all that happens, and then the dark saber comes back to Mandalore, but it's not in the hand of a Mandalorian, it's in the hand of Darth Maul. And then later at the end of Clone Wars, you see how all that plays out. I'm not going to spoil that for you because I think that's the best part of season 7 is seeing all that play out. And so anyway, it's got a super long and complex history. And so when we saw it back in the Mandalorian, it was like, oh crap, like they're gonna do all this and they're gonna explain this, and I'm excited to see. And I'm assuming in season 3 they're gonna talk a little bit more about like what's gonna happen with that and what's gonna happen with Mandalore, Bo-Katan, Din. I'm super excited for that.
So, do you have anything to add there, Scott?
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say, so there's a lot in its timeline that hadn't been filled in yet. We know it exchanged hands a few times. We know from Star Wars Rebels, which is set, 5 years before New Hope, Episode 4. We do know Bo-Katan does have it at some point because Sabine Wren wins it and gives it over to Bo-Katan. But then we know from the Mandalorian that Moff Gideon acquired it, but we also know the Empire had a purge of Mandalore, in closer to that Episode 4 era of Star Wars. So we know, the Empire came in all guns blazing to completely wipe out Mandalore at one point, and we, from there can assume that's when Moff Gideon acquired it.
Gotcha. So,
Which can I add something to that real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the way typically, since like the way of the Mandalorian, I didn't mean that pun, but it came out, is fighting and just a warrior mentality. Like a victory and defeat was really important to them, and so the only way typically in Mandalorian history that you could win the dark saber and become the ruler of Mandalore is by victory by combat of whoever has it. But that all changed when Sabine Wren gave it to Bo-Katan. That was the first time that had ever happened, which I think, and in my opinion, and this could be completely wrong, is why. And so Sabine gave it to Bo-Katan, but then Bo-Katan obviously lost it somehow to the Empire, Moff Gideon, in some way, which we don't know yet. Which is why I think in episode 8 of the second season of The Mandalorian, she wasn't so just giddy to take it back.
Yeah. I think it's a thing, if you lose it by combat, you definitely have to win it back by combat. But I kind of want to, just since we've, talked about the history of the dark saber, I kind of want to just get y'all's thoughts and opinions on the Mandalorian as a whole as it comes to like our Star Wars fandom. Because the Mandalorian, for me, the past 2 years has brought me back to Star Wars, and I don't know if that's was the case with you, Holden. Or
Yeah,
but
I didn't have half the knowledge I had until like episode 9, really, because like after episode 8, like I was turned off from Star Wars, like for most people for a good reason. But then episode 9 came out, and I was like, okay, it might be different. And then episode 9 plus like Disney Plus and the Mandalorian, like I probably learned more about Star Wars in the past year than I had my entire 22 years before that.
So does this mean you're a fan of episode 9?
No, I'm a fan of what it could have been, and I've seen J.J. Abrams' original script and what it was going to be called. It's going to be called Duel of the Fates, and I've seen what's it called? Like just art that they made.
yeah, well, that originally it was going to be directed by Colin Trevorrow, who did Jurassic World, and then so Disney was like, hey, let's do a saga where we have 3 different directors and 3 different screenwriters, and a host of screenwriters do 3 movies. So we had J.J. Abrams, then we had Ryan Johnson do The Last Jedi, and somewhere in that they said, Colin, you're gone. Part of that is maybe he wanted to kind of retcon some. Maybe he didn't really fill Ryan Johnson's episode 8 script, which I can't blame him. So I don't think he was playing ball, with the higher ups in Lucasfilm. Like, hey, I want to do this direction, but they're like, no, we're going in this direction. So then it gets to the point where J.J. Abrams has to come back for episode 9, and like you were saying, you love that opening 5 minutes of that J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie.
Oh yeah, like when I heard J.J. Abrams, when I heard the news that like Disney bought Star Wars, I wasn't very happy, and like that was, I don't know how old I was, like 18, something like that. But I was like, they're gonna mess it up. Like some things just need to be left alone, and I was like, Star Wars is one of those things. But then when I heard what J.J. Abrams was doing it, and I saw what he had done with Star Trek, I was like, okay, he might can do it. But he did all 3 Star Trek movies, and like that was his thing, and I don't think he got to do that. He may have got to do that more with Force Awakens, and I'm okay with Force Awakens, and like I agree, like that was the first personal experience I had where I actually got to go to a movie theater to see Star Wars, and like when that first came out, everybody was going crazy, like rightfully so. But I don't think that he got to do what he wanted to do with Star Wars. Like, but I love the 3 Star Trek movies, except the third one's all right. But like the first 2 are really good. But anyway, I really had high expectations for JJ, but I just don't think he got to do it the way that he wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree a lot with that. But now that we have a different direction for Star Wars, where it's not, hey, here's a $300 million movie every 2 years. Here's stuff that's, TV serial where it's week after week, building blocks, puzzle pieces that are all connected from the first episode to the season finale. The Mandalorian, I think, is the best thing Star Wars has ever done besides maybe Empire Strikes Back. And a part of that is because Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are huge Star Wars fans, Star Wars nerds, and they grew up, idolizing George Lucas, and now they get to play in that same sandbox that George Lucas built for them. And that's why The Mandalorian feels different than anything we saw with the sequels, 7, 8, 9. And so I'm excited for the next season because there's definitely some fan theories swirling out there. And, there's characters that have been introduced that maybe will get more play in the future. So it's an exciting time to be a Star Wars fan.
Yeah, I can concur with that, especially as someone who's, I feel like, just now getting like really into the series. I've really enjoyed it. Mandalorian probably brought me back around to it as well, because I'd watched the movies and that's kind of where I let it drop off. And I started watching the Mandalorian and I was like, I actually really like this, and it's pretty cool. Even though the first season, in my opinion, was hit or miss, kind of dry. Like, I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, but it took a little while to really get in. Season 2 had me ready. I was like, let's go. I'm for this. Coop Daddy says, and Rogue One. Got to throw Rogue One in there. It's a great movie. Dream Encounter Day says that episode 8 was wonderful. I don't know if I can say it was wonderful, but I can accept it. Like, I don't know if I'm fully there on wonderful. But I mean, that's okay. That's okay. That's the beauty of Star Wars, is that we all have our opinions on it, and we all often disagree, and it's great. That seems to be the normal thing. I want to circle back to the sabers real quick too, because Mr. Whittier actually looked up the Orange Saber.
I saw that.
Oh, all right.
So I'm ready to check this out.
Good-
Orange Saber.
good
Not
work.
much is known about it. Possibly a light side user having brushes with the dark side. So you'd have a yellow plus orange, or yellow plus red equal orange, which means you're very warm and devoted, putting the needs of others above your own. You can be supportive, encouraging, and inspirational, making others feel good about themselves in the process. You tend to be shy at times and often avoid conflict, but that is only because you want to spread positivity to everyone around you. You can sometimes have can be overly emotional. I still think I'm red. I never would have wanted to I never would have wanted to do that, but then the change happened, and the before times and the after times,
Yeah. I think the red shows your Webby side. But
You think so? Not the purple or the
No,
orange?
No. No. I think no. I'm making a construct here. I
All
think
right.
the red shows your Webby side, and the yellow shows your pumpkin side. Get it?
Okay, can you elaborate on that? Okay.
What do we usually associate with webs?
Spiders.
Are those good?
Some people think so, but I tend to disagree.
Okay, but let's just assume that they're bad.
Yeah, actually, I can go ahead and say that. I got bit by a spider decorating for Halloween 2 years ago. Most excruciating thing I've ever been through.
There you go.
It was bad.
There you go. So
It hurts to be a Sith.
red and webs. And when I think of pumpkins, I do think of Halloween, but pumpkins are pretty soft. Like if you drop them on the ground, they will break. Plus, they're kind of close to yellow. So there you go.
What a construct.
There's two sides to every coin.
Well, and one's a very soft, mushy side.
One's red, one's yellow. One will possibly kill you, and one you might could eat with some bread and enjoy.
What in the world is happening right now? What's up, spaghetti? Oh my gosh. Okay. All right, Wonderful Mermaid says, I just took the BuzzFeed quiz and got orange, which I'm super upset about. I was hoping for purple. That's okay. And Whittier says, welcome to the Orange Club. Okay. We're going to move on from lightsabers because I'm still coping. I'm still coping, and we'll swing back to Mandalorian because I actually want to talk about it kind of holistically as well. I've really enjoyed the Mandalorian, like we've kind of talked about. And of course, we're expecting, this book of Boba Fett coming up. I don't really know what that's going to be. Boba Fett had a completely different character development than what I was expecting from what I've seen of the movies through the Mandalorian. So I thought that was pretty cool. I definitely want to talk about one thing that's still Saber related though. So obviously, stream podcast, we've kind of established that whoever holds the dark saber rules Mandalore. Like that's how it is. That's the way it's done, and you have to win it by besting someone in battle. And our boy Mando gonna show up. Spoiler alert! Gonna show up and be like, "Here it is. You can have it. No, you can't." Huh? Like it just really hyped me up because we talked about it the other day.
Can we just say he looks so good?
Yeah, he does.
Carrying that and the Beskar staff.
In that full polished, shiny, complete Beskar armor, looking like a boss
While holding a kid.
while holding a baby. It's literally it's the most royal thing I've ever seen. Like people in Europe would have paid money to have been painted with a spear and a sword and a child. It just everything about it says I rule you. Like everything about it, and it's so cool.
I will say, the Mandalorian, yeah, he looks really good in his shiny plot armor. I mean, his Beskar armor. I'm just kidding. I have no complaints about that show, but that Beskar has saved his butt several times.
So many
from
times.
Some heavy blaster fire.
Yeah, that's true. That's a completely fair thing. But is it saving his butt, or is he using it to his advantage? Because I've seen the man like run out and be like, "All right, here we go. I know you can't shoot me. Boom, boom, punch you in the face. Boom, boom."
There's also a lot of gaps in the armor, which I know stormtroopers have terrible aim, but his whole arm is exposed. There's his neck that's exposed. His sides are exposed. I mean, he's got thigh pads and like shin guards, but there's some spots on that guy you can hit. But all of the blaster fire only hits him on the shoulder pad or right on the chest.
That's the way they wrote it, so that's what happens.
That's it. I really appreciate two things about that while we're talking about stormtroopers in season 1 of Mandalorian. I really appreciate that they have target practice and they can't shoot a thing. And I was like, heck yeah, that was so fulfilling and edifying for me. While we're also on the topic of stormtroopers and armor, this is something I thought about just for a long time, and the Mandalorian kind of put it into perspective for me again. Do they legitimately just give every stormtrooper like the thinnest plastic armor possible? Because obviously like sabers cut through pretty much anything, except Beskar, which was really cool to me. I didn't know that until the Mandalorian. But I'm talking like everything you shoot, everything you throw goes right through the armor of stormtroopers. I'm wondering if you could like kick hard enough and just fall off. So
probably.
I mean,
it's a mass-produced, armor for a galactic empire. It's not a small planet that has its regiment of soldiers. It's the whole galaxy. There's a billion of them, and to be able to produce a uniform armor like that to me says, yep, that's the cheapest plastic, because the Empire's cutting costs somewhere. The numbers guys are stingy with the budget, and I think the cost cutting is the armor.
It would stand reason, like to me though, to believe that they would save so much more money on cloning technology if we could just protect them. Then again, though, I guess with the Disney sequels, I mean, we're seeing less clones. We're not really seeing clones like we were in the Clone Wars inside of the armor, and I don't know a whole lot about that. I just know Finn came from somewhere. So like,
well, yeah. So the Empire does phase out clone troopers early on, in it once right after Episode 3, when it's now the Galactic Empire. First of all, those clones were designed to only last for a short war because of their advanced lifespans. So Palpatine's plan wasn't ever to keep those clones around. It was to have subjugated people be his army, and not just like subjugated like the Empire takes over a planet and you're a stormtrooper. But you see a little bit of this in Solo, and then really in this last season of the Mandalorian, where you get to see some other sides of the Empire. They got recruiting officers like our U.S. Army on like Han Solo's planet. That to be in the Imperial Navy might be your only chance to get off a planet. So it's not just clones that are programmed to be your army. It's propaganda for people to be bought into this empire, to volunteer to join the army. There's some twisted patriotism there. So in the original trilogy, those stormtroopers aren't clones. Clones have been phased out by then, and then we get to 7, 8, and 9, and it's there's a conversation between Hux and Kylo Ren talking about the First Order troopers, who are not people who have signed up at their local recruiting office to join the First Order. They're literally children that they've kidnapped to raise as troopers. That's what happened with Finn and those other people who were former troopers that renounced it. They were child soldiers essentially. In that conversation with Hux and Kylo Ren, he's like, well, maybe we should go back to clones or whatnot, and because they're like Finn, abandoning ship and stuff like that. But that's the kind of the different eras of stormtroopers. You have the clones, you have people volunteering to sign up for the Empire, and then you have child soldiers stolen off their planets for the first order troopers.
It gets kind of hairy. Like, that's kind of makes me kind of hurt for them, but also, like, I guess I'm a Sith, so I shouldn't care that much. But, like, it does make me feel
Before and after, baby. Before and after.
Before and after. I used to care before I found out I was a Sith.
Exactly.
It's one of those types of things. All right. Well, do you have anything else that you guys want to talk about Mandalorian-wise?
I just want to say the reason I hated The Last Jedi was because of the portrayal of Luke Skywalker in that movie. So to see Luke again at the end of that final episode, to see Luke in his prime, holding to like everything he believes in with the Jedi way of life and their code, that's the Luke I've always wanted to see on screen. Because we don't really get much of that. We get Return of the Jedi. He's fighting Darth Vader. But we get to see Luke Skywalker being the GOAT of Jedi, essentially, for, a 3-minute span. So that's what really sold me on anything they're doing from here on out.
Boom.
Wasn't there something, it might have been you telling me this too, or it might have been someone else talking about the fighting scene that happened and everything with Luke at the end of The Mandalorian pretty much being like kick for kick, punch for punch with Anakin.
It was a mirror to, or at least not everything was exactly the same, but there was a lot of callbacks and references to Vader's scene in Rogue One, like the hallway scene with, but it's instead of Rebel troopers, it was Dark troopers.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of like father-son type vibes going on right there.
I just think that's a really cool thing that was added in, like, subliminally. But it's also interesting because that's something that wouldn't have necessarily been taught to Luke because, Anakin didn't teach Luke really anything. Well, if you think about it.
Well, with those two scenes, I think it's opportunities for the filmmakers to give us our mind's eye version of these characters. Because if you grew up watching Star Wars didn't end with the films. It took off in your imagination. So to see Darth Vader in Rogue One be the force that he is, like he's a nightmare walking, you can't stop him. That's something you always visualize, but you didn't get to see actually in the movies because it's a very clunky suit with a guy
in the 70s.
In that case, and then same with Luke, you finally get that Luke Skywalker of your imagination using the Force, pushing, crushing, lightsabering, and that's what you get. So I think I don't know if it was an intentional, homage to that Rogue One scene, but it just more so being an opportunity for the filmmakers to give people like those characters in their prime doing damage.
Yeah, it was really refreshing for me to see like Luke do that. Though, so now we've already talked about that. I was a little disappointed when I actually saw Luke, and that it really hurt me because the CGI that was used to put Mark Hamill's face into this series was very television-esque for budget. I get that it's a TV show, but it's also Disney, like legitimately a company that's the company. You know what I mean? And so I saw a YouTube video where someone had actually made a deep fake of it, and the deep fake looks better.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
they should have just got Sebastian Stan to do it.
They really should have. I would have been so for that.
Started that.
Yeah.
The whole time I was from the moment that the one X-Wing showed up, I knew who it was. But from that moment until he revealed his face, I was like literally saying out loud, "Please be Sebastian Stan. Please be Sebastian Stan. Please be Sebastian Stan." And it didn't happen, but either way, I was still crying, so it was okay.
Yeah. I really wanted it to be Sebastian Stan.
I do appreciate the fact that it was. Now, Mark Hamill wasn't doing the lightsabering, but once that hood's off, that is Mark Hamill on set doing the voice. It's just his face is de-aged.
Yeah.
And I think they might have learned a lesson there where, maybe deep faking someone else's face onto a different face has better results than the de-aging of Mark Hamill's face. We've seen Marvel, do a really good job with it, but that's also bigger budget probably in this. I think each of it is Disney, but I think it's like, $20 million an episode, which over the course of the season you got the budget of like a blockbuster movie, but it's just I think there's just limitations per episode and time. I think when it comes to CGI, it's all about time. And they cranked out these episodes. They shot these, boom, 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 and they're ready to go the next year. You got 5.5 hours worth of footage a year later, whereas most movies, it's a 2-hour movie, and it takes 3 years to make. So there's limitations, time, and budget, I think, for that.
That's fair. I can find some grace in my heart for that. I can totally do that. All right. So we talked about this like kind of mirroring of Anakin or Darth Vader whenever that fighting was happening, and we've talked a little bit about like this legacy, I guess, now of Skywalker, since we had an Anakin and a Luke, and obviously we didn't really talk about Leia, but we have a Leia, and that's where the Skywalker line ends. But anyway, we've seen all that and everything. But I gotta know, the thing that came up that I just never had heard before, and I'm gonna really let you guys lean into it. Like, I had never known this idea from a viewer that Anakin, Darth Vader, for anyone who doesn't know, Anakin was potentially conceived through the Force by Palpatine. And that just sounds absolutely absurd to me. Like, the first time I heard it, I was like, nah, no way. Like, we don't know who Anakin's daddy is. We really don't. We don't know who Anakin's daddy is. I want to go, like, ask his mom, be like, hey, what happened? And apparently, I don't know all the deets, but, like, she don't know. I'm like, what's going on with that? So I'm like, and it begs the question whenever you potentially are, like, Force born, I mean, like, it really makes me think two things. It makes me think, is Anakin the chosen one, as we also talk about, or is Anakin Jesus? Like, which is one of those things? And he's not Jesus. So is he the chosen one? Is he conceived through the Force? Was it by Palpatine? There's so many good things there to talk about. And I've honestly, like, I've let you both know that I wanted to talk about that, and also kind of stopped you and been like, hey, I don't want to hear about it before tonight, because I'm ready to see my mind be blown, because I feel like y'all are going to blow. And I may be setting the bar too high. But I feel like my mind's going to be blown by this, because I'd never heard of this ever before. So is he conceived by the Force, Holden? Tell me. Or
it's part 1 and part 2. Correct me. Is he born of the Force / is he the chosen one?
Right. And we can start with, is he born of the Force? Because I feel like that gives a big, if he is, that's a big argument towards the second.
Yeah, I think what the movies tell us, they tell us, hey, he doesn't have a father. He also has the highest midichlorian count ever. So, yeah, he's conceived by the Force. I think it just gets hairy when you go about how that happened. Because I think recently they've come out and said that, hey, it wasn't Palpatine that manipulated the Force to conceive Anakin. And I think that was something they said just kind of in during the press for Rise of Skywalker, because there's a lot of maybe not well thought out things when it comes to Palpatine returning. So that's something that's on record, that like Disney canon says he was conceived by the Force but not by Palpatine. But Holden, I think you agree with me on this, that the Palpatine's monologue, storytelling, the Anakin with the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, heavily implies that it was Palpatine.
I think from that conversation and from that story, I wouldn't be surprised if people thought that he was the father. It's very leaning towards that, or at least he is.
Geek Theory came back in and said that Matt Martin, which you probably saw, which is a Lucasfilm writer, confirmed that Palpatine was not the father. So we all agree, like, canonly, Palpatine's not the father. So but is it really canon if the writer says it? Because that's outside of the universe, and I've seen people say things and then they put it in the films later anyway. Not necessarily with Star Wars, but with other things. And so we'll see how that continues to pan out. I'd be curious, Geek Theory, but also if not Palpatine.
Well, I think regardless, I wouldn't call Palpatine the father. I think he just manipulated the Force, the Metachlorians, to create life through Anakin's mom. I don't think. I mean, yeah, he's the father, but it's not. It's when you say Palpatine's the father, it's like a secret scandal that Palpatine did to impregnate, Anakin's mom, kind of thing. But I think it's just like he had, through the dark side, he's able to manipulate Metachlorians, the Force, to create life, and the only way he can, there's still limitations. It has to be, you still have to be naturally born. But I would never say, and that's what I think happened, but I would never say Palpatine's the father. He is the reason it happened, but I would never give him the father card. So that's my
it's just
opinion.
a weird connotation that doesn't really make sense in this context.
So he doesn't get visitation rights. But is he, like, I don't know, because I'm wondering, it begs the question also, and remind me of, like, Palpatine's, like, master, if you will.
Plagueis.
It begs the question, like, I'm just thinking right now out loud, that if canonly we're saying that Palpatine is not the father, could Plagueis be the father? Because Plagueis figured it out. Like, Plagueis was like, hey, if Plagueis was the one that was able to figure out how to create life, and he taught, Palpatine everything he knew, it doesn't necessarily mean that Palpatine actually used everything that he knew. And otherwise, if Palpatine did it, then doesn't that mean that both Plagueis and Palpatine have created life? So if we've seen this happen twice, we just don't know who the other person is. Or did Plagueis actually create Anakin, and Palpatine just knows about it and knows that Anakin's the one that is created? And this might be stuff that you've thought out before, but I'm just thinking it right now, and it seems to make sense to me that maybe Plagueis is the Papa Plagueis.
I think timeline-wise, Plagueis has been dead for a while. And because Palpatine's he's not a young guy. Throughout all of Star Wars, he was never a young guy. Starting in Episode 1, he started out as an old guy. I'm pretty sure Plagueis, by the time of Anakin's birth, had already been done away with. Because I don't think Palpatine entered into the public sphere as a politician until after that.
Yeah, and plus by the time like Episode 1 rolled around, like the Jedi thought the Sith were extinct. So does that make sense? So if he's that old, but they've been thinking for X amount of years that they're extinct, then how could Plagueis be the father? Because Anakin was only 9 in Episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
So timeline, it just doesn't kind of add up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's true because he's aging like a normal human would age. Geek Theory adds in a statement, it was a statement that was given to avoid misconceptions in a Star Wars comic that came out that had artwork that seemed to imply that Palpatine manipulated the Force to impregnate Anakin's mother. In the book, Darth Plagueis is present and alive during the events of the Phantom Menace.
Oh, okay.
But that's no longer canon, so that's legend.
Oh,
Thank
okay,
you
the
for
Plagueis
your
book.
knowledge there, Geek Theory. That's really helpful. That's really, really good. I'm telling you, guys, if you haven't checked out Geek Theory on TikTok, by the way, Homeboy he knows his stuff. I'm telling you, like the Star Wars like authority on TikTok. So we're glad you're here, dude.
Yeah, because I don't think in new canon we've gotten a Plagueis book, and that Darth Plagueis book from back in the day was a lot of that source material for that. But I don't think Disney's really come back to touch on that. And yeah, and hearing about that comic that implied everything we already thought was implied, it's just I think it's an interesting thing that they've kind of tried to backtrack and retcon, and I think that just has to do with placing some more importance upon Rey than Anakin with the new sequel trilogy.
Okay, that makes sense. So whether or not Plagueis or Anakin Plagueis or Palpatine is Anakin's father, we then do definitely agree that he is conceived by the Force, which I think is a really strong argument for the case that he is the chosen one. But not a lot of people, or I guess a lot of people do think so, but that's not necessarily agreed on. And so I was talking to someone even this week that had this idea that the chosen one was a mantle or a role that you put on. Like, so at different periods in time, different people are the chosen one. And I'm just going to go ahead and say right off the bat, like, I'll go ahead and start this off. I don't think that holds water, because it's not the chosen seven, it's the chosen one. So if anyone can take on the mantle of chosen one, it's a self-defeating statement. You're really losing the idea of oneness. So I still think, and I think a strong evidence for that is his birth, that Anakin definitely the chosen one. And I got some thoughts on that, but I want to like throw it to you guys, because chosen one, if my limited understanding is chosen one is just going to bring balance to the Force. That's the whole idea, right? Or is there more to that than I need to know? Because there might be.
Well, I would say Anakin's the chosen one, and I think a lot of George Lucas's Star Wars is built around family, but it's also obviously they're blockbuster films, but tragedy plays a lot into the mythos and lore that he created. And George Lucas, he's kind of always pulled different religious themes, like for different things. So that's, there's Jedi, qualities, a lot of Buddhist traits, but the idea of the Force is very like Taoism influence. But you see him even pulling from Christianity for this, immaculate conception of Anakin. So I think that's, I think that part of it is George Lucas kind of has some fascination with spiritual and religious beliefs, so he's kind of pulling different things. But I think just because Anakin's story is a tragedy doesn't mean he wasn't the chosen one. It's just a tragic story about the one who's the chosen one. This rise because of the gifting he has as the chosen one to be seduced by the dark side, to ultimately not be the hero of the story. Because we just think in terms that the chosen one will be the hero of the story. I don't think that just because his story ends, well, ultimately there's redemption at the very end, but I just think because his story is a tragedy doesn't mean he wasn't the chosen one. So that's my opinion on that.
I would agree, but I also think, and this is what like kind of like solidified it for me. Well, one, I fully don't understand what bringing balance to the Force means, and I've had like questions about that for a while, because the prophecy in and of itself is like, I think the idea of bringing balance to the Force is vague. Like, what does that mean? But in terms of, that's a different topic. But in terms of being the chosen one, and you're about to get there on Clone Wars, I think, obviously, like everything in the original 6 movies with the redemption and his whole story, he is the chosen one. But I think that kind of got solidified for me in season 3 of the Clone Wars on the Mortis episodes, which, like, just context, the Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka get stranded on a planet called Mortis, which I don't exactly know what the planet even in and of itself means, but on the planet, they come in contact with these 3 beings, which ultimately embody the Force. There's the father, who is just the pure embodiment of the Force. The daughter is the light side. The son is the dark side, correct? Like, and there's like certain things that Anakin is forced to do in those situations, and then the father of the Force literally says to Obi-Wan, he is the chosen one. Or I think it's actually to Anakin, like, says to him, you are the chosen one. And so I don't think that
because doesn't the father want to essentially replace the son and the daughter with Anakin?
Yes.
And so it's,
well, he wants him to replace him.
Yeah. So I think it's a thing where that balance of the Force is a tiptoed line between light side and dark side. And
Anakin was the only one who had enough power to control them both. And so, like, those are one of, at least until season 7, like those were my favorite episodes of the Clone Wars because it's just like it is so much stuff that I wish I could see in a movie, but I know I never will. But I'm like, thank you, Dave Filoni, for doing that because that made so much more sense. So like, rewatching that in that moment, I was like, yeah, like, and I don't think that was ever really in question as much until the sequels came out. Because it kind of brought up this idea, well, if he is the chosen one, then why is Palpatine still alive? Like, why is there still evil? Why is there still all these things? Which, like, when the way they left it in episode 6, like, that wasn't really a thing. It was the thing that you speculated, and you're like, okay, what happens now? But the way that Disney portrayed what happened after episode 6 brought some, I don't know, discrepancy towards the legacy of Anakin and if he was the chosen one.
I don't know if it really, like, devalues the idea of this balance of the Force, though, because I really don't think that there is balance if there's not light and dark. Because if we eliminated all evil, if you will, if all the Sith Lords and everyone are gone, then that is imbalanced. That's just light side of the Force in action, no dark side at all. So there always has to be one. And I mean, it's infamous scene from Anakin and why most people tend to not like him or begin to not like him. But, I mean, we had a lot of Jedi, a whole lot of Jedi, pretty much Palpatine and, I mean, what, at most 4 or 5 Sith at a time? 2.
Well, yeah, because
They follow the rule of 2.
yeah, because I guess it depends on when Dooku became his apprentice.
That's who I'm thinking of.
But like Maul essentially isn't a Sith after episode 1. He's a dark side Force user, but he wouldn't be it. He's not a Sith. Because he's been disowned by Palpatine at that point. So Palpatine with Maul, you got 2. Palpatine with Dooku, you got 2. Palpatine with Vader, you got 2. But that, there is that imbalance because there's 10,000 Jedi. And at some, and further back into the galaxy's history, there was times where there's 1,000 Jedi and 10,000 Sith, so there was never balance in that regard. Then you get into this new era where it's no Jedi, 2 Sith, or there's Jedi out there, but that's what people mostly, when they say the balance of the Force, that's their main argument. But I think it kind of goes beyond that. I think it kind of goes to the state of the galaxy as a whole, as the Force is indwelling with everything. And that's kind of vague to say when is that balanced,
I think that's fair enough. I tend to just also make that same argument, though, that like even if it's not perfectly balanced, like Anakin greatly decreased the number of Jedi. So like that definitely leveled the playing field a lot more. So I mean, there's some thoughts like that I have that just make sense. Just make sense to me. So, all right. Well, we'll end on a fun thing, which I think is really, really fun. And it is, I mean, I guess there's so much we could talk about when it comes to like Anakin and Ahsoka, his Padawan, and how awesome she is. And obviously she's in the Mandalorian and everything. But there's one scene that's just become like famous, infamous, I guess it depends on how you see it, that I just feel like is a fun scene, something that we can kind of laugh about, but also is like kind of cool if you really know a little bit about it. And I've called it the Obi-Wan Anakin dance fight is what I have it like called here, and you can call it whatever you want. But it's definitely this like fanfare of sabers where we're just like not striking, not doing anything. We're just it's party time, dance time. We're just getting our jig on, and that's not really what's happening. I know that there's more going on there. But either of you want to speak into the intricacies, I guess, of what we see in that scene where they're just appear to be standing there and flailing their sabers around themselves? Like, what are we seeing?
Well, context. It's, if you don't know what we're talking about, it's in episode 3 on Mustafar when they're dueling it out and just flying their sabers all around and not doing anything to actually strike each other. But then eventually their sabers meet and they're just stuck there in a draw. I think it's beautiful because to me, the way that I look at it is that like Obi-Wan has trained Anakin since he was 9 years old. And eventually, if you go watch that and keep going to the end of the fight, like they're brothers. Nobody knows the other person better than those two people right then. And I think what you see in that is two people who know each other so well that doing everything that they can to try to distract that person or to try to best that person cannot be bested by the other person because they're so in tune with each other and know each other so well that even after all of that, it still ends in a tie. And I granted, like, the fight eventually ends the way that it does, but in that moment, it's like it's a battle of wits extended to their sabers. And I don't think it needs. I think it should be praised and rejoiced because I think it's beautiful. Like the imagery of two people who know each other so well that they literally can't beat each other. Like I think that's awesome.
That's pretty deep. Do you have anything to add on that?
Well, I know since it's a highly choreographed scene, some of it is okay. That's a 1-2 saber hit here, 3-4 saber hit here, kind of thing. But ultimately, it is a fight between brothers that are equally matched, and so it's a thing where when Anakin comes up and slings around back behind him, that's now Obi-Wan is anticipating a different kind of move, so he swings back around this way, and then we're going this way, so it's just a constant like.
It's a chess match.
Just what they might not be connecting sabers, but they're putting their saber in a position, anticipating what that move is, kind of thing. So now that to me, that's the best lightsaber battle in the whole saga.
Agreed.
That one. So
agreed.
So I think I can come around. While it is funny and we like to pick at it, I agree with everything you both said. I think it's really cool. In fencing, it's an actual technique that a little research on it where like. It's literally, like, as you both touched on, an opportunity to transition, I guess, your own attack or anticipate your opponent's move. And since they both were like in, I guess, limbo in a stage of constant anticipation, not knowing what the other person was going to do, seeing something and adjusting and just pivot until finally someone could like make a blow. It's a really, really cool moment. I don't know if I think they were equally matched, but it definitely says a lot to how well they knew each other. Because I personally believe, even though it doesn't end quite this way, I personally believe Anakin could best him if only he had the high ground. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, well, I'd much rather see Obi-Wan and Anakin do a lot of twirly lightsaber stuff than old Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader just be like, I gotta take a break, man.
It certainly is a completely different type of battle between the two of them. Like, you're not wrong at all there. And I would rather see that type of just battle just in general anyway, because in like the sequels, I don't particularly love like how sabers got like 40 pounds heavier. Like, because you notice they swing with a lot of intensity and two hands on sabers, and everything we see in the Clone Wars and like in the prequels, like those things, you can toss them around.
Yeah,
they're light.
Which was what Luke was talking about in Episode 8, Season 2 of The Mandalorian, that talent without training is nothing. Literally said that, and the first thing that came to my mind is Rey. No training whatsoever.
With
and
her
like,
hacking style.
Yeah, she's just swinging like Kylo Ren's a tree. He's not a tree. Like, you're in a forest, but he's not a tree.
But
like,
even Kylo Ren fights like that.
But at least he could do something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and we could say, Kylo Ren or Ben is definitely trained, but he's also a little unstable. So I'll give that to him. He's just, I gotta kill you. Oh.
But his 3 minutes in Episode 9 was the best part of the sequels.
Yeah, his redemption.
I so wanted that to end differently.
I did too. I was expecting it to end differently. But anyway.
Yeah, that's neither here nor there. So that, I mean, it does beg the question though: is Rey a Skywalker?
No.
No, identity theft.
Identity theft is a serious crime, Jim.
No.
Yeah, I mean, the closest way I could see Rey ever being a Skywalker, honestly, the only way, hear me out, the only way I could see it is if Palpatine did in fact father Anakin. And oh, look at there, it's already been confirmed he didn't. So I guess that means that she'll never be a Skywalker. Oh well.
No.
And that's not me just wanting to hate on Rey. Like, Rey is okay in her own right, but
just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense.
And like, why do you call the movie The Rise of Skywalker and literally have somebody who actually has Skywalker blood rise from a pit and then kill him? It doesn't make any sense.
Why couldn't they have both made it? Why couldn't they have shared life force and just both lived?
Why couldn't she have healed him? And there you go.
Yeah, I think we get that little tease of Dark Ray when she's on the crashed Death Star. That would have been way more fascinating and a much more like creative risk to go ahead and say, hey, this girl that's been the hero of these past 2 movies actually gives in to the dark side.
And the villain
comes back to the light. We hadn't had anything close to that in Star Wars. And they chickened out. And then they kissed.
Which, dude, so I went and saw The Rise of Skywalker twice in theaters. The second time I went to get like a personal second opinion because the first opinion was not good. And then, but the second time I watched it, it was still like right after it came out. And I sat in the back to get other people's reactions. The moment they kissed, everybody just didn't know what to do. They were just like everybody started looking at each other. Everybody was like, what? Like I literally heard people go, what just happened? And I was like, yeah, agreed.
I kind of anticipated that it was about to happen, and I wasn't okay with it. And then it happened. I was actually, Scott Sky and I went together with one of our other friends, and I was like, that same type of like thing. Like, what in the world like just happened? Dreamy Count of Day just says, I never walked out of a movie until episode 9.
I wasn't expecting it at all. Like, people were talking about how they've been, like, teasing it, and I never looked at it that way. I was like, these are just 2 people arguing. I was like, I never looked at this in a romantic light ever until that happened. So I was completely taken by surprise.
I don't think it was romantic at all as much as just sensual tension. They were like, oh, these 2 don't like each other, but they're also, like, always in each other's heads. So
yeah, but
this can go one of 2 ways.
Plus, their force connection wasn't because of them anyway. It's not because they had a strong connection to each other that in episode 8 they were able to do, the force FaceTime call. Ultimately, Palpatine reveals that he manipulated that from the beginning. So
there's no freedom anywhere.
Can we talk about the Mandalorian more? I don't want to talk about Rise of Skywalker.
You could almost maybe make the argument that Palpatine is the greatest Force user ever, but I don't want to say that.
I think you could very well make the argument he's the greatest villain ever.
Yeah.
I think that's very fair and valid.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, and we can just leave it there.
Until the sequels. Like, just give me the first 6. And he's still, like, I like that version better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even as a villain, I like him better. But that's just my opinion.
I think that's fair. Well, guys, do you have any, like, last-minute thoughts that you want to add into the conversation tonight? Like, you were like, hey, I really wanted to say this, or hey, I had a second thought. You can take a second to think about it if you want.
Well, I don't really have anything else to add to this conversation. I'm just looking forward to 2 things. I think the next time I'll come on this show to talk Star Wars will be when you finish watching Clone Wars. We got to come back and have some more conversation.
And Rebels.
Yeah, you got to get to Rebels too, but Clone Wars first. And then I think once we get into a lot of this new, Book of Boba Fett, Mandalorian Season 3, the Ahsoka series, once some of that stuff has come out, we got to have, the recap, review, the deep dives into all that.
Honestly, it's probably going to take me a little while because there's a lot of content to get through with both the Rebels and Clone Wars. So we might see that those things end near the same time. So that'd be kind of cool because the Mandalorian seasons aren't super long, and since they're a week at a time, it's really consumable for me. But you're on. Like, I'll see that, and we'll plan it. Holden, if you want to be a part of it as well, I definitely would like to do that. I will say that this conversation has lit a fire again under me, if you will, to try to make some more time to watch the Clone Wars because, as you guys know, and as you guys know on stream, I pretty much stream. I work every day, and I stream every day also, basically. There's so much stuff to do. When I'm off, it's offline content. But gosh darn it, this is content now, and I need to watch the Clone Wars. So that's what I'm going to have to do. And hopefully Wonderfully Mermaid will also want to watch it with me, so then that time can overlap. We'll see. I know that she's absolutely an avid Star Wars lover. But, Holden, do you have any last-minute thoughts you want to add?
If you've seen the movies and you haven't seen Clone Wars and Rebels and you don't have Disney Plus, get both of those things, watch them, because it will change your perspective of the movies and
Right.
Star Wars as a whole. And thank Dave Filoni for that, because he's the GOAT.
All right. I think that's super great. Guys, again, if you're watching right now, or if you're watching on YouTube, we do this live every other Thursday at twitch.tv/WebbyPumpkin, 7 p.m. Central Time. If you're listening back on Spotify, Apple, wherever you enjoy your podcast, same news to you. Would love, if you want to see what we look like or see kind of like what this all can be or is, YouTube or live on Twitch, would love to have you there. Again, hang out with us on social media. Join the Discord. Those links are in the chat. You can also get those links at any of my social or anything. I'd like to thank again Miss.
I was just letting you know, I'm pointing at the lizard in the room.
I saw that earlier over there, but I was like, I'm not going to interrupt this. I'm just going to let it go.
I'm so glad that we all know that. So for the viewers at home, a lizard is in this room, and apparently Holden noticed it first, and it came over here, and I saw it on the door, but I didn't want to interrupt. And then now, like, then you saw it, and you were like, hey, look there, and it has made its way to my couch.
Oh, it
So-
just jumped.
So we're going to handle that in just a few moments, but thank you so much for listening and watching. Thank you so much for liking, commenting, subscribing, chatting, and following. Love you guys. Looking forward to the next episode. Don't know what we're talking about yet, but follow us on social. I'm Webby Pumpkin everywhere. Got Scott Sky. I'd like to say a special thank you again to Holden, the walking encyclopedia, and to Scott for being like the OG all the way. We'll have to try to figure out a way to do a Freestyle Friday again at some point, but DMCA strikes and craziness on Twitch might make that kind of difficult. We'll figure it out, though. There'll be something we can do. And a big thank you to you guys, everyone that tuned in. We had a pretty great audience the whole time. Really enjoyed it. You guys make it worth it. It's the reason that we're here. So appreciate you all, and we will catch you in the next episode. See ya.
Peace.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. This is yeah. This is yeah. This is yeah. That's clear, no fear. Yeah, yeah. This is yeah. This is yeah. This is yeah. That's clear, no fear.